Imagine waking up tomorrow with no house, no blanket, no jacket, no shoes, and no clothes, no heater. The temperature is dropping. The wind is cutting through your skin. Yet somehow, our ancestors survived worlds exactly like this. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans faced environments that could kill them simply by getting cold. But humans weren't originally built for extreme cold. And that created a massive survival problem. Our ancestors evolved in relatively warm environments. Staying cool was actually extremely important. And humans developed an unusual advantage. We became remarkably good at endurance. We didn't necessarily need to outrun an animal. We could follow it, wait, track, and keep moving. That ability helped humans spread far beyond their original homeland. But eventually, they reached places where the temperature became a serious threat. And suddenly, their biggest advantage became their biggest weakness. Most mammals entering cold environments already had built-in protection. Thick fur, dense coats, natural insulation. Humans had almost none of it. No fur, no thick coat. So how could a relatively vulnerable animal survive here? The first answer was already inside the human body. When temperatures fall, the human body immediately begins fighting to conserve heat. Blood flow near the skin can be reduced, helping slow heat loss. And then comes the most obvious reaction: shivering. That shaking isn't random. Rapid muscle contractions help produce heat, but there was a catch. The body needs fuel. And for ancient humans, food was more than something that stopped hunger. Food was fuel. The more energy they had available, the more their bodies could use to keep going. But even a well-fed human couldn't simply stand outside in freezing weather forever. Something else had to change. Imagine a prehistoric night before reliable fire. Then imagine discovering something that could turn darkness into light. Fire. Fire changed the rules. It gave humans warmth. It allowed them to cook food. It gave them light and could help deter some predators. But fire wasn't enough. A fire could warm you, but it couldn't stop the wind from stealing that warmth away. So humans began doing something even more important. They started building protection around themselves. A cave could help. A rock overhang could help. Even branches and grass could become a barrier against the wind. And suddenly, surviving the cold became less about fighting nature and more about controlling the environment around them. Fire, food, and shelter were beginning to work together. But one major problem remained, something that could stay with the body, something that could become a second layer of skin. The second skin. Humans had discovered something almost as important as fire. Animal hides could do something the human body could not. They could trap a layer of warm air close to the skin, trap the warmth. Now the environment was still cold, but his body didn't have to fight it alone. The hide wasn't creating heat. It was helping keep the heat from escaping. But turning a raw hide into something useful wasn't simple. Fresh hides were heavy, wet, and difficult to work with. A raw animal hide wasn't automatically clothing. Humans had to learn how to process it. They learned to clean it, stretch it, and prepare it. And eventually, they learned how to make it much more flexible. That flexibility changed everything. Now it could move with the body. They could travel farther into colder environments. Places that once seemed impossible to survive became reachable. Cold was no longer an absolute wall. But clothing wasn't just about staying warm. It changed how long humans could remain outside. And that gave humans something incredibly valuable. Time. More time to travel. More time to hunt. More time to gather food. Survival was becoming a system, not one invention, but a combination of small advantages. Fire, food, shelter, clothing. Together, these things allowed humans to survive where their bodies alone never could. But the farther humans traveled, the colder and more dangerous the world became. Cold wasn't their only enemy. Wind, water, darkness. Water could become dangerous when temperatures dropped. Getting wet in freezing weather could make survival much harder. Cold plus wet could become a serious danger. So preparation became just as important as endurance. They had to think ahead, prepare before the cold arrived. Because once the storm arrived, your options became very limited, and even fire had a weakness. Fire can go out. Wood could become wet. Fuel could run out. So keeping a fire alive became a skill of its own. Keep the embers alive. Sometimes preserving yesterday's fire could be easier than starting tomorrow's. But humans also learned to create fire when they needed it. That meant controlling fire instead of simply discovering it. And once fire became controllable, the night itself changed. Before reliable fire, darkness belonged to the unknown. After fire, humans could push the darkness back. Darkness became distance. And something else happened around that fire. Humans could stay together longer. They could share food, skills, and knowledge. And knowledge could become another survival tool. One person could learn what another had already discovered, and that knowledge could be passed from one generation to the next. Because eventually, humans discovered something even more powerful than fur, fire, or clothing: the human mind. The real advantage wasn't that humans were physically stronger. It was our ability to solve problems, see a problem, find a weakness, then invent a solution. That pattern changed human survival forever. They didn't build the perfect shelter immediately. They tried. The shelter failed, so they learned from the failure. Fail, learn, improve. Nature itself became a teacher. Animals already had solutions humans could copy. Copy what works. Watch, observe, then improve it. That is how simple observations became technology. And technology didn't begin with machines. It began with a human asking, "Can this work better?" And this mindset allowed humans to keep moving. Across mountains, across forests, across frozen landscapes, the world got colder. Humans kept moving. And every new environment created a new survival problem. Where can we sleep? Where can we find food? How do we stay warm? Survival wasn't one invention. It was thousands of small discoveries built on top of each other, and the next discovery would change humanity forever. But there was still one problem humans couldn't solve with fire or clothing alone. What happens when there isn't enough food? Winter doesn't care how clever you are. When food became harder to find, the harder finding enough food became. Humans had to become better hunters, not because they were the strongest, but because they could work together. Teamwork. One person could notice something another person missed, and together, those observations became a plan. One brain is useful. Many brains are powerful. Humans also discovered another strange survival advantage: sharing. Sharing could keep the group alive. A successful hunter didn't only feed himself. The food could feed everyone, and if someone became injured, the group could help them survive. Because humans weren't surviving alone. They were surviving as a network, and that network made every individual stronger. The group itself became a survival technology. Skills could be taught, techniques could be copied, and mistakes didn't have to be repeated by everyone. Knowledge could compound. One generation learned something. The next generation improved it. Learn, improve, pass it on. That simple cycle allowed humans to survive environments their bodies alone were never designed for. And slowly, the impossible became normal.